Okay, let's try this for a third time. Now that I've got everything unmuted, I think you can hear me now. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Let's see. All right. Well, it's been a little bit since I've been with you. Got a lot going on. And to be honest, I didn't even feel like doing it tonight. And that normally means that I'm supposed to be doing it. So I'm here with you tonight with my coffee mug in hand that says, "First we coffee, then we work." This has been my trusty mug all day. It has seen 3 cups of coffee, and right now it is being brought to you by the cinnamon cocoa mix that was in my Christmas stocking, because when you've had 3 cups of coffee, it's probably not a good idea to have a Starbucks at 8 o'clock at night. So, I am having some cinnamon hot chocolate. It is a very interesting flavor, but nonetheless, I am sipping and enjoying. So, I got a special book at Christmas time that's all about coffee, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to put a trivia question out there, and I'm maybe we'll get more than family on here, but if not, I'll be sending my family members a gift card, possibly. And I'm going to see who can get the closest. So the question is, I'm going to show this to you here. Whoop. How many calories in a drink from Starbucks? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a drink from Starbucks, and I'm going to ask you for comparison how many of something it's worth. So, for example, and it's talking about a grande size. So if you've been to Starbucks, if you don't go to Starbucks, that's a medium, okay? So all of these drinks are medium size. So, in a medium-sized hot chocolate from Starbucks, okay, that is about 370 calories. That is the equivalent of how many gummy bears? So I'm looking for a number. A hot chocolate that is 370 calories from Starbucks is the equivalent of how many gummy bears? See if you can give me a number. And if I can get somebody who gets the exact number, I would give you a Dunkin' Donuts, $10 Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks gift card. So 370 calorie hot chocolate medium from Starbucks is the equivalent to how many gummy bears? I'd show you the picture, I'd show you the book, but I don't want you Googling the book and finding out the answer. So think about it, give me your answer in the comments, and we'll see who comes close. So 370 calories in a medium Starbucks hot chocolate is the equivalent of how many gummy bears? So I'll come back to that. I'll let you guys get a chance to ruminate on that and to come up with the answer. I guess I could give a gift card to the one who gets the closest. That would be the fairest thing to do. But I see you guys getting your guesses in. I will come back to that towards the end. But so I just recently started a new class, and the class that I started is called Integration of Spirituality and Counseling, and it is a really interesting study because for the longest time, when in Christian circles, when we hear the word psychology or like a psychiatrist, we have a bad connotation in our mouth or bad taste in our mouth. Those two fields, theology and psychology, have kind of been at war with each other for a while. There's people in the camp of that we can't take anything from psychology, that only counseling should only come from the Bible. And then there's some that on the other side that say we should only trust the science of psychology and the Bible has no place in counseling. So really it's kind of an integrated study of just how do psychology, theology, and spirituality meet together, because science does show that there are benefits of spiritual practices to mental health. So it's really important, a really important study. One of the points that's brought up is, as Christians, we go to the doctor for our physical health. And we trust the science. I mean, we may not know if the doctor we go to is an evolutionist or not. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But you're trusting that that doctor has had the training that they need to treat you for the symptoms that you have. And then on the other hand, we don't necessarily trust counselors or psychiatrists or psychologists that have studied how the brain works. And sometimes the thought is that only pastors can counsel, or we can't accept anything that comes out of psychology. So it's kind of an interesting study to see where the two things kind of integrate and how it meets, and what's a good balanced approach to have as a Christian counselor, and even as a counselor that is a Christian that may be counseling people that aren't Christians. So that's kind of where my topic comes from tonight. So let me just tell you about the start of the new year has not been Richard 35.1. How do you have 0.1 of a gummy bear? You ate off everything but a nub of an arm or something. 35.1. Okay, so we're getting some good answers. So anyway, our year started with I had a case of the shingles on my eye, so my eye was swollen shut. Most recently, in my immediate family, Richard got COVID, and we had already been exposed together and not quarantining together, and then he got it, and then so I'm still in quarantine. He is officially released, but I still have to wait a few more days, according to the health department, who is now going to call me and text me every single day until I'm out of quarantine. We found out this weekend. So it's been already, 2021 has been a really crazy, and I wasn't expecting to wake up in 2021 and for everything to be fixed. I know a lot of people were holding hope that 2021 was going to be so much better, and it still has the potential to be, honestly, I felt like I kind of thrived in 2020. I had some really tough times, but I had some really, really good times. And I ended the year on a really positive note, and I feel like I'm actually in a really good place. So I don't know about you. I don't know how your 2021 is going, but so anyway, that's just kind of catching up. I've kind of decided that maybe I won't do a coffee talk with Kim every week now that I've started class, and I'm taking on some more roles at work, and just trying to make sure I'm taking care of myself. And I have a domain for my blog that I've not been using, but I'm paying for, so I might try to get back into some of my blogging. But I'm thinking of going to doing coffee talk maybe twice a month, so like every other week, and trying to throw in a blog every now and then. So I hope you still check in every now and then. I'll try to make sure I push a promotion. And if you're coming through and you've just joined, I did not put the question in. So I don't know, Richard, if you're watching, if you could type it in. 370 calories in a Starbucks medium hot chocolate is the equivalent of how many gummy bears? If you can put something in there, so that way if somebody comes by, they can see that. But this is my class this week. I had to write an article review on an article that was picked, and I had a few articles to pick from, but the one that really struck me was one about forgiveness therapy. I thought, man, I've never heard of forgiveness therapy. What is this forgiveness therapy? And it was talking about how it's a clinical intervention for chronic disease. And I'm thinking, how many people around us have chronic diseases, chronic illnesses? And what is the correlation between chronic disease and forgiveness or non-forgiveness? I don't know which is the right word there. But so I did this article review, and I was thinking, man, that would be a great topic. We're coming off of a time where, I'm going to be honest, there's been some really heated things on Facebook. and I've kind of just started to steer clear of some of the political things and such, just because I'm kind of seeing that it's not healthy for me. I get to a place where I don't feel like it's a good place for me to be at. So I've kind of started to steer clear, but man, I tell you, there some conversations I have been in, it can get very nasty very quickly, to the point where some people, I'm going to be honest, I've had to stop following some people, not unfriending, but just gotten to where it gets so nasty that I can't keep watching posts about things. And people are just really passionate, and I get that. I see we got lots of some people taking multiple guesses. But I'm just thinking there have even been some relationships, even in Christian circles. I think Christian circles have been divided by politics a lot in this political season. And there's even some relationships that might have to be repaired. And so I've kind of been thinking about this. This is why I chose the topic. It was interesting to me. And but it also I'm just going to get into it. Okay. So I want to kind of approach this in both a logical way, and I also want to approach it from a spiritual way. Because, you know what, sometimes I have people that come through here or watch the videos later. They may not be believers, and they may not say, hey, I'm going to take the scripture part, but I can at least take the logical part. And that's good. And you can take the scriptural part too, because God's word is truth. And, if that can be a help to you, then I want it to be there to be a help for you. But talking about chronic disease, I'm getting some information here from this article called Forgiveness Therapy, a Clinical Intervention for Chronic Disease. It is from the Journal of Religion and Health from 2011. I know it's a few years older, but it is a scientific journal, so it's peer reviewed. It's not off Wikipedia. But it says that there's a number of chronic health conditions such as addiction, obesity, mental health circumstances, COPD, cirrhosis, and etc. that have been identified as health conditions with social and interpersonal etiologies and consequences. Etiologies meaning reasons behind something. So think about this. There's a lot of these chronic diseases such as COPD, mental health circumstances, addictions, obesity, cirrhosis, etc. that are the direct result of interpersonal and social consequences. Some of these things can be relational. And the article goes on to talk about really how it deals with relationships and adverse childhood experiences. And I wanted to show, I was reading a book just recently, and I posted this on Facebook, but I was reading this book called The Body Keeps the Score, and they were doing all these studies of people that were coming in, obesity studies, people that would come in and lose 100 pounds, and then they'd go home and somebody would say something that triggered them or that reminded them of past trauma or past abuse, and they actually gained weight back at such a rapid rate because their obesity actually lied in the fact, stemming from their trauma. So I wanted to talk a couple minutes, and that's what this study really started to talk about. They were looking at some research on adverse childhood experiences. And let me just give you some background. Adverse childhood experiences are experiences that happen within the first 18 years of a person's life. It can include abuse, household changes, and neglect. So let me tell you some things that fall under this. I want you to think about yourself where you might fall into some of this. So emotional abuse, that could be a parent or step parent or an adult living with you at home who swore at you, insulted you, put you down, or acted in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt. There's physical abuse, Someone living in your home that grabbed or slapped you, threw something at you, hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured. Sexual abuse. A stranger who was at least 5 years older, or stranger or family member, who was at least 5 years older than you ever touched you or fondled you in a sexual way, or made you touch them. Okay, so that's all under abuse. Household challenges. A mother treated violently, witnessing that, hit with the fist, hit with something hard, repeatedly hit over a few minutes, ever threatened to be hurt with a knife or a gun by a father or stepfather or boyfriend. That's mother treated violently. Substance abuse in the household. Mental illness in the household. That's depression or other mental illness, a suicide attempts. Parental separation or divorce. Incarceration of a household member. Those are all household challenges. Neglect. There's emotional neglect. Someone in your family helped you feel important or special. You felt loved. People in your family looked out for each other. This is like if it wasn't there. And your family was a source of strength. Physical neglect. Someone didn't take care of you. So when we look at this, you think about different types of abuse, household challenges, neglect. All before the age of 18. These are what they call adverse childhood experiences. And I want to show you what some of these things can lead to. I have a graphic here, so I'm going to share that. Hopefully you can see. Okay, so adverse childhood experiences can have lasting effects. They can lead to injury, depending on when it happens, traumatic brain injury, fractures, or burns. It can lead to mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, PTSD. It can lead to hard maternal health, an unintended pregnancy complications, fetal death. The other thing, adverse childhood experience would also be prenatal. If a child had problems in utero or was hospitalized for several months when they were first born. Infectious diseases, these are some of the lasting impacts, can lead to chronic disease such as cancer, diabetes. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Risky behaviors as coping strategies, alcohol and drug abuse, having unsafe sex, and a lack of opportunities, so education, occupation, and income. And I will tell you that I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. In my line of work right now, currently, in a type of social work, I actually deal and work with a lot of parents that are in situations such as this, partly because of their own personal experiences. And you might be thinking, how does this even get involved with forgiveness? Well, the article that I was reading, a lot of their study actually went on with people who had experienced some of these adverse childhood experiences. Certain things is, even if it's not meaningful neglect, but you don't know where your next meal is coming from. Those are adverse times. Poverty is an adverse childhood experience. A traumatic event can depending on when it happens, can cause a toxic stress, and we're going to talk about how that affects you. So one of the things that they're talking about in this article is that chronic exposure, there's a couple hypotheses here as to how these things actually affect a person later on in life. So first of all, it's suggested that adversity is a stressor, both biologically and psychologically. It accumulates over time, and the body's resulting biological burden becomes toxic. So the stress builds up over time to a point where it becomes toxic. The second part of this is that when adversity happens at a particularly sensitive developmental period, including before birth, it becomes incorporated into the person's brain and physiology. There is scientific evidence, and I should have brought my book out from The Body Keeps the Score, that talks about the DNA and genetic code and how parts of it, it's not that it's completely rewritten, but it does change part of the genetic code for later on down the road. So when you have children and such, those biological differences can be transferred. And that's why trauma can become a generational thing if not dealt with. It says that these studies suggest that chronic exposure to childhood adversity with its heightened stress results in physiologic weathering, and it changes biologically. It exhausts the person, and it's been shown to result in shortened lifespans, which also results in chronic disease. I don't want to bog you down with all the scientific stuff, but there are some, one of the things that it does is it weakens the immune system, which actually causes this problem with chronic diseases. Neuroimaging has been used to document relationships between chronic stress from adversity with diabetes, major depression, blood pressure responses, and PTSD. These studies have revealed changes in both brain activity due to the stress and in brain anatomy, which is assumed to be the result of chronic stress. So this research is showing that chronic stress, and this can be even as an adult, when you are chronically stressed about things, your blood pressure goes up, it changes your eating habits, right? Which can lead to high blood pressure, high cholesterol, which leads, to weight gain, which can lead to sleep apnea, diabetes, all of these things, that the stress becomes toxic. So where does forgiveness come in? Okay, so now let's talk about this, because I don't know about you, but when someone does something against me, it causes me stress. Whether it was intentional or not. And I would say some of the biggest stressors in my life over the last couple of years have been things that have been done to me that I don't even know if people realize the impact of what they've done to me. And maybe to them it wouldn't even seem that they've done something to me, but I have perceived it as being done to me. And that's something that I have to deal with. But yes, I have struggles with high blood pressure. Some of that's diet and exercise. But I wonder how many of our chronic health problems are actually caused because of things that we harbor and hold inside. So let me ask you a question. Let me get your input here. How would you define forgiveness? How would you define forgiveness? Can you give me an answer in here? And I see we got I'm going to write, while you guys send me an answer here. Oh, I don't have something to write down with. I was going to write your answers down, but that's okay. I see we have 52, 98. Skip some of these extra ones. 39, 98. 35.1, 50, 85, 30, 125. Okay. What is forgiveness? What do you guys got? What can you give me as forgiveness? Can you give me forgiveness? What would you say? What is forgiveness? Well, while you're typing that in, let me tell you, I got two different definitions here. Thank you for putting that question in there, my moderator. How would you define forgiveness? Well, I looked it up on dictionary.com, the source of all things true and correct. Says, to stop feeling, well, I looked up forgive. To stop feeling angry or resentful towards someone for an offense, flaw, or mistake. Easy enough, right? Just stop. Just stop feeling it. Right? That's all you gotta do to forgive. Just stop feeling it. That shouldn't be too hard, right? I looked up Merriam-Webster, and I took part of a definition from there that I really liked because I think it kind of goes with where I'm headed with this. To give up resentment. There we go. Sorry, I got lost there for a second. To give up resentment of or claim, to give up a claim to requital. To give up resentment or to give up a claim of requital. And that kind of encapsulated what my thoughts were on forgiveness. There's two parts, there's two sides of forgiveness here. There is a cognitive side that is called decisional forgiveness. Decisional forgiveness is that logic, cognitive, okay, they did this to me, I'm going to decide to not let them have control over me anymore. So I'm going to decide to forgive them. It's all cognitive, okay? I can make steps and I can make cues for myself. I'm going to forgive. End of story. Boom. Okay? You can say that all you want to. But if the definition of forgiveness is to stop feeling angry, there's an emotional aspect as well. So there's emotional forgiveness. So decisional forgiveness, emotional forgiveness. This is where it really gets deeper. This is an emotion toward the offender, almost a sense of compassion. So it's a sense of, you know what? I don't want them to have control over me anymore. Okay, that's almost still a feeling of, you're not worth it, right? I'm not giving you control over me. But then as time goes on, I am able to develop a sense of compassion. Almost like, well, you know what? Maybe they don't know any better. Maybe they weren't treated any better, and that's how they treat me because they haven't been treated better. Or learning to have a compassion because I see how God has loved and forgiven me. So I see forgiveness as two parts, a decision and an emotion. So why forgive? Why forgive? I'm going to appeal to two sides of this. The logical side first. Okay, the logical side. Why forgive? Well, there's a logical side of this in that there are physiological effects and benefits of forgiving. So let me talk about that. The physiological benefits of forgiveness interventions include letting go of the continuing unforgiveness and embracing an alternate positive orientation to life where that perpetrator no longer controls the client's response to the world. To date, evidence has documented the impact of forgiveness and unforgiveness on a body and health in several ways by hormone patterns, peripheral psychological measures, and brain function as revealed in images and scans. So let's talk about some of the benefits here. Findings about the body's hormone response to unforgiveness reveals that unforgiveness is reflected in specific cortisol or stress levels, adrenaline production, and cytokine balance. Cytokines are the cells that signal molecules that aid cells to communicate to immune responses and stimulate the movement of cells towards the site where there's inflammation. Okay, so it has to do with immune and inflammation and trauma. Okay, so these hormone patterns are known to compromise the immune system, with the long-term consequence of leading to several identified chronic illness. That's for unforgiveness. It messes your hormones up. It messes up your adrenaline production, and it does not enable your immune system to act how it should act to be able to keep you healthy. The physiology of the body's autonomic and sympathetic responses, that's your nervous system, autonomic and sympathetic. That's your fight, flight, and freeze. And people who have accomplished forgiveness have also been compared to those who have continuing unforgiveness. Forgiveness reportedly resulted in beneficial psychologic changes, including lower heart rate, increased rate of cardiovascular recovery, reduced resting blood pressure, and less EMG tension, and reduced skin conductance. Forgiveness has also been documented to impact the structure and function of the brain. Specific areas of the brain are active with forgivability judgments. And actually, that forgiveness part happens in the frontal part of your brain, which is the higher functioning part of your brain. So that's where you can think of logically, right? Some of the consequences of your actions. So and I know that was a lot of scientific stuff, so I'm sorry if that bored you on there. But I wanted for those who might be interested in the science, I wanted for you to be able to see how there are physiological benefits to that, as well as spiritual benefits. So with the last couple minutes here, the spiritual argument, I typed in a search for Bible verses on forgiveness, and I got 5 pages, and I'm not going to talk about all of them. The Bible has a lot to say. God has a lot to say about forgiveness, and there's a reason why. It impacts us physically, emotionally, spiritually. So I want to pick out a few of these that you guys already know. Ephesians 4:31 and 32. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another. Why? As God in Christ forgave you. You've been forgiven. So appealing to the compassion side of you, forgive as you've been forgiven. There's also here in Matthew 18:21 to 22. This is kind of the stern reason why we need to forgive. Peter came up and said to him, Lord, how often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? He says, as many as 7 times. And Jesus said to him, I do not say to you 7 times, but 70 times 7. So it doesn't matter how many times, keep forgiving. Colossians 3:13 says, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, as the Lord has forgiven you. So you must also forgive. There's the compassion factor. You've been forgiven, so you need to forgive. Matthew 6:12 says, forgive us our debts, as also we have forgiven our debtors. There's verses that say that if you don't forgive, God will not forgive you. And so we need to be giving forgiveness. Now, we're not necessarily talking reconciliation. Forgiveness and reconciliation are 2 different things. There are certain circumstances where if you've been, if you have been sexually abused or physically abused, there you can forgive, but you don't necessarily have to reconcile that. And in some cases, there is it can be more harmful to the client to try to relive that. If you can reconcile it, that's great, but there's some situations that are not healthy for you to be put back in. So I would always seek wise counsel before that, especially when it comes to sexual abuse. I would not go to someone by myself if I had been sexually abused and try to confront them. There's too much psychology behind that, and that is a tricky one to try to get involved in. But the ultimate picture, Jesus Christ saying in Luke 23:34, when he was on the cross, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And then the people cast lots to divide his garments. Forgiving, even if the person's not sorry, it's on me to forgive. That is my decision to forgive. And choosing to forgive cognitively, I release myself from being controlled by the other person by cognitively giving it up. And then my heart, as I dig deeper, my heart is able to emotionally start to have compassion. So anyway, those are some logical and spiritual arguments for why forgiveness. I know it's been a heavy topic. I know I'm running later, but that's something that's been on my mind. I wanted to, I don't know everybody's story. I don't know what you might need to have worked on in your life. If you have chronic health issues, maybe there's more to this. But I did want to give my answer here. For 370 calories, and a grande hot chocolate is the equivalent of 45 gummy bears. 45. So when I look, it looks to me that the closest is going to be Allison Parsons at 50. That is the closest one to 45 that we have. So it looks like, Allison, you're going to be getting I know you're going to want Dunkin' Donuts and not a Starbucks. So you'll be getting one from me so you can enjoy some coffee on me. I want to thank you guys for joining with me on Coffee Talk this week. I hope something that we talked about was beneficial. I know it was probably pretty academic, but hopefully you got something from it. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. I'm going to try to start blogging some more, so be sure to check out the blog. But that's all for tonight. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this week's edition of Coffee Talk with Kim, and I will see you in a couple of weeks. Bye guys, have a good evening.